Hello FTA students, this video is going to go through the last part of your final project, slides 8 through the end. So we're going to start with the voluntary response survey. You need to ask a survey question that is related to your data, and so I did do that. I'm going to put that right here. Alright, so I asked what worries you for my question. And then I created a form. So you need to go into your Drive and you're going to add a new form. Now you could also ask your question on social media if you want, but you're going to have questions for your form. So one of my questions will be, what worries you? And you probably want to make it multiple choice. So you'll make it multiple choice and you'll put in all of your options. Okay, and so like one of my options might be grades, and you're going to fill in all of the options that you want to list there. Then you also need to ask what grade are you in? And you again probably want to make it multiple choice, so you can add the grades 9, 10, 11, 12, and maybe you could put not in high school if you're doing social media. Okay, and then lastly you want to ask, how interested are you in this question? On a scale of 1 to 10. And so people would type a number. Okay, so once you do your survey, and you need to share that, so you can send it, you can email it to people directly, but for it to be a voluntary response you would need to post the link. I usually click shorten URL and then I copy the link. And then you can post that link in social media, or you can just put your survey in social media directly. You can give it a title too, like for my math class. Okay, and then that should show up when you share that with people. Alright, so once you get people to respond, then you can look at your responses in a spreadsheet if you click on the spreadsheet right here. So here are my responses here. We'll get rid of this because we are going to make that in just a minute. Alright. And this was the grade. I asked their math period, but I just saved that over there. So here's their grade, how interested they are, what worries you. And so I copied all of this information using Snagit. I copied it into my slide. And then we want to make a pie graph out of the responses to what worries you. So we're going to go back to our survey results, and we're going to highlight the column about what worries you, and we're going to do insert chart. And you have to wait a second, and it's going to come up. Now this is not the pie graph that we want, so you need to go over to here to chart type, and we're going to choose pie graph. And you want to make sure everything makes sense, so you have all the right titles on here. You can see the percentages, and you have a title for your whole graph. So then if you click it and you copy it, sometimes it doesn't give you a choice to copy it there. You can try here, see if that works for you. And then we want to put that into your project. So I don't link to the spreadsheet, I just paste it unlinked. Like that. Okay, and then you have your pie graph in your project as well. Alright, so let's move on. So now we are going to make a Venn diagram from the results. You don't need to use all 3 columns. I liked to use how interested a person was and what worries you. So I was looking for what was one of the highest worries, and these actually all tied for the highest worries. Let's see which one I used. Okay, so I chose the one about people who are worried about canceled activities. People who are worried about prom and graduation, baseball season being canceled. And I thought that the people who were worried about canceled activities might have a high level of interest in the question. So for my Venn diagram, I chose people who had an interest level of 10 and also who were worried about canceled activities. So for the Venn diagram, we're going to draw that with shapes. We're going to start with a rectangle. And I don't like the gray in the rectangle, so I'm going to go here and I'm going to change it to white. And then I need circles. So I'm going to make my first circle. And then I'm going to copy it. And then the problem is that I can't see the other circle behind it, so I'm going to make this circle transparent so I can see through it. Okay, so that's pretty good. I'll just fix the symmetry with this box here. Okay, so then I'm going to use text boxes. So I said that the right one is going to be worried about canceled activities. And then the left one was going to be interest level is 10. Okay, so first what I did was I looked for people whose interest level was 10 and were worried about canceled activities on my spreadsheet. So let me delete this now. Okay, so interest level is 10 and we're worried about canceled activities. So here's one. Here's one. And let's see. This one too. So I had 3 people whose interest level was 10 and were worried about canceled activities, so I'm going to put them in the project. And I'll make a new text box. So those people go in both circles, so the 3 goes right here. Then I'm looking to see how many other people had an interest level of 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more. So I need a new text box for them. Okay, and then worried about canceled activities, let's see. So I already counted this one. One more, 2 more, 3 more, and that's it. So 3 more under canceled activities. And then I need to know how many students were not in either circle. So far I have 13 students counted. So I'm going to go back and see how many students there are altogether. The first line is not a student, so I need to subtract 1 from the last line. Okay, so there's 27 lines minus the first line, so there's 26 students altogether. So I'm going to go back here. This is already 13 students, so that means there are 13 more students here to make a total of 26 students. Alright, so now I need to find a simple probability, I need to find a compound probability, and I need to find a conditional probability. So I'm going to make a new text box right here. Okay, so I decided to find several probabilities. For your simple probability, you could have done either of these first two. For your compound, you could have done either of these middle two. And for your conditional, you could have done either of these last two. So I decided to call interest levels 10I and call worried about canceled activities C. So the probability that of I, which is probability that your interest level is 10, is there are 10 students with an interest level of 10 out of a total number of students, which is 26 if you add up all the students. Then you want to simplify your fraction by dividing numerator and denominator by 2. And so I have 5 out of 13. Probability that a student is worried about canceled activities is going to be all of the students in this circle, which is 6 students, out of the total number of students, which is 26. And then I can simplify that fraction to 3 out of 13. This is the probability of the union of I and C. That means the probability that a student's interest level is 10, or they're worried about their classes, or they're both. So for this one, you want to include anything that is in either circle. So I'm going to add 3 plus 3 plus 7, and I get 13 out of 26 students altogether. And if you simplify this fraction, you get 1/2. This is the probability of the intersection of I and C. So that means only what they have in common. So only the people whose interest level is 10 and they're also worried about canceled activities, which is 3. So there are 3 people who are both out of 26 students altogether. All right, this one is saying the probability that the interest level is 10 given that a student is worried about canceled activities. So for this one, we are only looking at students who are worried about canceled activities, which means that the denominator is 6. So we already know the student is worried about canceled activities, so we're only looking at 6 students. And out of those 6, how many have an interest level of 10? So out of these 6, the only ones with an interest level of 10 are these 3 right here. So this is 3 out of 6, which also simplifies to 1/2. And then this one is saying the probability a student is worried about canceled activities given that their interest level is 10. So for this one, we know that their interest level is 10, so we're only looking at this part of the graph. And so there are only 10 students that we're looking at. Of these 10, the numbers that are worried about canceled activities are 3. So this probability is 3 out of 10. All right, and finally we need to make some conclusions about your surveys and the probabilities that you found. So I wrote one paragraph of conclusions just about the results from the surveys, things that I found interesting. So the things that worried students the most were canceled activities, grades, distance learning will be difficult, and loved ones getting sick and missing friends. And I wrote down the percentages I got for each one. Then I made a paragraph about the probabilities that I determined, and this is one that I thought was interesting. Students worried about canceled activities had some of the highest interest in the question, and I thought that might be true because their worries had already come true. All of those activities had already been canceled. The probability that a student lists their interest as 10, given that they listed canceled activities as their biggest worry, is 50%. Okay, so I hope that these videos helped you do your project so that you had a great end to your year in AFTA.